When the original Surface Duo was announced and everybody got to see it for the first time, I think that the thing that everybody freaked out about first and for the longest amount of time, and even still to this day, is extraordinarily impressive is what you're seeing right here. The fact that this thing is so incredibly thin, 4.8 millimeters thick. That is an extremely impressive engineering feat to build a phone in a chassis that is this thin. But guys, today I'm breaking a rule that I normally follow. A rule that says don't waste too much time talking about devices that your audience isn't going to be able to buy. I'm breaking that rule because the device I'm talking about today is so incredibly impressive, I have no choice but to talk about it. We're talking about the brand new Honor Magic V2. This thing looks unbelievable. If we look at their website, the first thing you're going to maybe see here is how incredibly thin this device is. How thin is this device? Well, I just told you that Surface Duo, 4.8 millimeters thick. The Honor Magic V2 is 4.7 millimeters thick. Guys, they have finally surpassed the Surface Duo, but even more impressively than this is not a dual screen device like Duo. This is a single folding OLED screen. And again, it's 4.7 millimeters thick. It's 231 grams. That makes it, what, 40, 50 grams lighter than something like the Pixel Fold? This is, for the first time in the history of folding phones like this is a device that when you use it, it's going to truly feel like a normal phone. The thickness, the weight, they've ticked all these boxes in a way that nobody really has prior. And honestly, it's unbelievably impressive. Let's go through some of the stuff here. As you can see, 9.9 millimeters when it is folded. Of course, like I said, 4.7 whenever it is unfolded. Extremely, extremely thin, but there's much more to it than just that. So as we go through these specs, there are some really incredible things here to come. So how about this? How about a 5,000 milliamp hour battery? You're probably wondering, how in the world are they putting a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in a device that is only 4.7 millimeters thick? Well, they are using brand new silicon carbon technology, which allows these batteries to be preposterously thin. It's basically allowing them to make batteries that are much more dense than batteries in their competitors, and therefore a lot thinner and a lot higher capacity in a much smaller space. 66 watt charging is also there. When we look at these screens, they're both very, very impressive. So the tablet screen is 7.92 inches, 120 hertz. The cover display is 6.43 inches, also 120 hertz. But you can see here, 20:9 aspect ratio is pretty standard. That's like basically a normal phone. Again, this is going to feel like a pretty normal phone. But look at that peak brightness. 2,500 nits of peak brightness puts it at the very top of most phones, and it absolutely demolishes the other foldables. I believe the tablet display peaks at 1,600 nits, which is still pretty impressive. Here's a really interesting thing. Not only does it support a stylus on the tablet display, unlike Samsung's devices, it actually supports the stylus on their cover display as well. As you can see, you're choosing the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, but apparently Qualcomm has stopped using the Plus moniker. Maybe they thought that was confusing. It was. This might be more confusing, though. This is not just the 8 Gen 2. This is the latest version of the 8 Gen 2. This could have been called the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 2, but they're not using that naming. So again, this is the faster version of the 8 Gen 2. And with a device this thick, or this thin, I guess we should say, we've seen this in other devices like the Surface Duo, like the Pixel Fold. They get a little bit warm because there's just not that much space in there to dissipate heat. So they're using some sort of proprietary bionic cooling system. I'm not sure what goes into that, but apparently they've had to try and solve that thinness problem with their own cooling system. There is no wireless charging, probably due to the fact that it's so very thin. That does generate a lot of heat. If you thought we were done with impressive specs, the cameras are also pretty darn solid. There's a 50 megapixel ultra wide, f2.0 is the aperture. For the primary, it is another 50 megapixel with f1.9. I wish the aperture was a bit bigger, but that's still not too bad at all. OIS is, of course, there. And then there's a 20 megapixel telephoto lens, which I wrote down here, I believe is a 2.5x. So kind of okay. 2, it's better than having a 2, but even 3 is probably not enough for me. That telephoto is probably not going to be all that useful, but the other two cameras do look like they should be pretty solid as well. And then, of course, we have a pair of hole punch selfie cameras on the cover display and inside that tablet display. But as I'm sure you know, software is the biggest factor with mobile photography, and of course, Honor's gotten pretty good at this. So I would imagine these cameras are going to be just about as good as any other foldable on the market. So a few things I did not mention already. It does have 12 gigs of RAM, 256 storage, and that hinge is rated to 400,000 folds, which is, I believe, a whole lot more than most other devices like the Z Fold and the Pixel Fold. And let's take a look and compare here with this tweet. Very, very nice tweet here. The thickness of these devices. Okay, so here's the Fold 4 looking like an absolute chonker compared to these other devices. There's the V2, the Pixel Fold, and the Mate X3. And as you can see here quite clearly, the Magic V2 is by far the thinnest device. Now, of course, the camera bump is quite big. That's just physics, okay? Cameras need depth, so the thinner the device is, that camera bump's going to stick out. It's just going to be a thing. But even next to the Pixel Fold, which is quite thin, which, you know, it makes the Fold 4 look pretty chunky, that Magic V2 is just considerably thinner, and it's even thinner than the Mate X3. Now, like I said earlier, the big disappointing factor about this is it is currently only being released in China. Let's look at this Android Authority article because they have some of this stuff broken down. Only available in China, 8,999 yuan, which would translate to 1,253 American dollars, which is insane. That's for the 16 gig version. But Honor did hint that a global launch could happen later this year, and Honor has launched some of their prior foldables internationally. And that doesn't mean you're going to be able to buy it in your carrier store in the United States, but it would be something you could get in Europe and you could potentially import. Of course, you're probably not going to pay $1,253 for it. The price is going to go up, probably closer to like $1,400 if I was like really like crazy guessing, just based on the fact that that's kind of where their other foldables have been in the 1,400 euro range. So maybe importing it, maybe a little bit more than that, but still less than $1,800 for a device that on paper kind of makes the foldables that we have over here look not quite as impressive as they did before. Guys, what do you think about this device? Are you impressed by it? Is this something you would want to buy if it were available for you to easily purchase? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.